Yeah, we are taping, so if you don't mind going to the mic so we get the...
Say your name and your company.
My name is Chet Jones with Custom Design Computer Consultants. And what is your opinion where you listed the office politics as what percentage of failure will you consider the office politics in the implementation of an EMR?
I don't think I could give you sort of an assessment of the percentage. I can tell you it is certainly deep-sixed some relationships for sure. I think the most important thing you need to do is be prepared, first of all, by being aware that this is a dynamic that is in place. Typically, there is tension in some of these relationships, and you should be prepared to deal with that. You need to spend some time in your preparation before you go into a new client situation, sort of figuring out the perspective of those various folks in the office and what the workday is like for them and what they might be afraid of. And if you have the opportunity, ask them. In the process we use, we actually spend time sitting with everyone in the practice to ask them what they would like to accomplish by implementing an EHR. You know, what are their issues? What really frustrates them? How much time do you spend doing this? You know, tell me about your average day. That is a great time to begin to build trust and cultivate a relationship with everyone in the office. And that is probably the most effective way to begin to neutralize some of those politics. That having been said, just be careful. Don't become a sounding board or a place where one employee can complain about another employee. You need to kind of downplay that should it happen. So, you know, this is tough. I understand. You know, you don't get to choose who you work with. It's like being part of a family. You don't get to choose your brothers and sisters and stuff, so it's frustrating. But we're really hopeful that putting in some automation here and having this tool is going to make this a great place to work. You know, going to make your life and your job much easier. So.
Okay. Well, let me just readdress that just a little bit differently.
Okay.
What percentage would you say the consultant failure to understand the office politics?
A bunch of them.
Okay, there you go.
A bunch of them. That's why there are not a lot of us out there. And in particular, understanding that, you know, there is very often that family relationship dynamic, whether it's a husband-wife or, you know, a son-daughter, cousin, it happens a lot. And in Florida, it's almost a constant. In the smallest, you know, the onesie-twosie practices, particularly the sole practitioners, you'll often find family members working. So just tread lightly. You know, don't go in and say, "Gosh, doc, you know, you're a great doctor, but that practice manager you've got she is clueless." That's not going to come out well. Yes, sir.
Your presentation has been very enlightening. I see two distinct opportunities here. One would be the traditional VAR model where you partner with a software vendor and basically get into the sales cycle. And then, of course, the distinction that some of members of this group have is that they can offer the one-stop shopping. Mm-hmm. The other opportunity that I see is perhaps the one that the path you've chosen to go down, which would be the consultant to the practices. How would you, if you were to summarize which way we should essentially be thinking about based on our own strengths and so on, if you could address that in a few minutes, that would be great.
I can certainly speak to it from our own perspective and why we were a consulting company to begin with, and we started out 18 years ago. We were founded to be a change management consultancy. And in 2005, we were pulled into a health information exchange opportunity because the change management dynamic and the ability to facilitate sometimes competing entities who needed to collaborate was something that we did. And from there, we just, you know, the opportunity was so great because the level of uptake in healthcare of IT has been so low. I spent 10 years with Digital Equipment Corporation, and some of that time I spent working with the channels, or not in the channels organization, but with the channels organization. So I know what that looks like in a big company like DEC, and I knew we didn't want to be a reseller. I've moved all the boxes and licenses I care to at DEC, and that was not, you know, where our focus and our interest lay. But I think if you are a reseller, there is opportunity because this one-stop shopping is a very, very compelling argument and a very compelling and easy to explain value that I think could very quickly help you establish yourself in this market. It is more difficult, although not impossible. I mean, I'm standing here today having done this for a while. It's not impossible to establish yourself as an EHR consultant or technology consultant to a practice, but it's just a longer learning curve, I think, and you have to know how to consult versus how to sell. And if you have had the opportunity to gain some consulting skills, then you're probably well predisposed to move into that direction. But it is a consultative sell. It is a problem solving. It is somewhat different from selling a product or even a service for that matter. I hope that was helpful. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Manuel Villa with Villa Technology. Patty, 2 questions for you, please. One is, of the 75% of the EMR failures that are out there in the industry, how does that affect the new implementations? And second of all, if a VAR is thinking about going into this business, what would be the ideal mix for them from a employee standpoint?
The ideal mix from the employee standpoint?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. You need to, I think, take into consideration that there's been a fair amount of back-channel discussion with doctors about the failed implementations, so that there is an awareness. It may not be completely accurate, but they've all talked about the horror stories. They've all heard these exaggerated, oh my God, it was awful, we had to pull it out, we never could use it. And some of that is true. So what I do is lead with a big chunk of my value as a consultant is we're going to put together the transition plan. We're going to help you decide what data is going to be pulled over, what do you need to have online, nearline, and offline from your existing database, whether it's paper or electronic. We're going to work through what makes the most sense for you from a training perspective, because there are vendors that'll say, we want to do 5 contiguous days of training, and you can't see any patients that week. And if you're in a single doc practice, that's ridiculous. You can't, from a cash flow standpoint, you can't close the practice for a week. You can't close the practice for a day. You've got to come in with some half-day ability to continue to see patients and generate revenue. So I think you need to be very prepared on the front end to develop cultivate a sense of comfort with that physician or the practice manager to say, the biggest piece of what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to make this as painless as possible. It's not going to be painless, and there will be a transition, but my goal is to make this happen as quickly and as smoothly as possible, and then do that. In terms of the employee mix, you mean like in terms of salespeople versus implementation people versus consulting people? I think it depends on who you might choose to partner with, the product, and whether you choose to be an actual reseller or a reference partner. There are any number of different ways that you can partner with a vendor, and it depends on what the core services are that you are providing right now. While you're considering with all of this an opportunity to maybe profoundly change your company, I think you still need to be very clear about where your core competencies and your core skills lie, and not try to do a 180-degree reinvention of the company, because I just think that's really, really risky, even though the opportunity here is huge. So I would build on what you do and what you know. So if right now you are providing a lot of hardware support and service and some software support and service, then I would continue to emphasize and lead with that, and maybe partner with the consulting company that does some of the stuff like Hielix, and there are others like us out there, as opposed to trying to build that in-house. So start with what you know and what you've got, and then expand out from there as you continue to add to your client base and you learn more. Because you could find that you're going to be really focused on, say, optometry, ophthalmology, because that's a very technical, very specialized space. And if that's the case, that may also influence, what your needs are and where you go to fill those needs. In that case, I would try to, One of my goals, I'll tell you, for Hielix for 2011 is I want to hire a doctor that no longer wants to practice, who will help me run my consulting team into ambulatory physician practices, because there are guys like that out there. But I want somebody who's been a hands-on clinician, because we've got an RN who's also an attorney on staff. A strange combination, right? An RN attorney. So we do have a clinician on staff, but I'm really looking to fill that gap because we didn't originate in the clinical space. So. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Patty. I'm Johnny Fears. You spoke to some of the EMR packages and software providers that may not meet certification and may drop off the map. Well, in the same regard, with the software as a service and MSP providers that are hosting some of these solutions, are there standards, requirements, certifications for those providers as well, so that we know we're partnering with the right provider and not, have to make a change if they don't meet certification?
Right. Some of what's required by ONC for the certification will dictate a certain amount of the relationship and the technical requirements for the hosting companies. So you are getting some extended assurance there, I think. But some of what we're going to talk about in the questionnaire that's focused on how do you find a good partner is a process of due diligence, where you need to be looking at the software company, determining how. You need to make an assessment of the product. You need to make an assessment of the company that says, are they financially solvent? Do I have a reasonable expectation that they are going to continue in business? How likely a takeover target are they? If they are a takeover target, what might happen to their product line? Because, we saw this when Allscripts bought MySys, suddenly they had a plethora of competing products. And at the end of the day, the MySys products are going away and the Allscripts products will be the survivors. So you need to be doing a little bit of go-to-ground market listening, when you evaluate this as well. And then ask them who their hosting companies are and do your due diligence on those companies too. If they're not, a well-established, my favorite is a hosting company is actually based in Tampa. There's several in Tampa, but this one in particular, the company owns all of their own real estate, including the land they're on, so they can do whatever they want. And they own dark fiber going up I-75 and I-95. And they meet SAS 70 requirements, so they host some apps for CENTCOM, which is at MacDill Air Force Base. So that's about as bulletproof as you're going to get. So I don't worry about them. But that's pretty easy. You can easily find most of that out on the internet. The harder part is who's thinking about buying who, and would a big company buy a smaller company only to take a competitive product out of the marketplace? And to a certain, that is a possibility. That could happen in some places.
Steve Spearman with Health Security Solutions. We're a new MSP, which basically means our core competency at this point is we look good in suits. But we're getting the technical expertise too. But our focus is going to be on providing security services to physicians and hospitals. I don't know if you've dealt with a lot of companies with that sort of focus, but can I expect that that's something that physicians are even going to want to get involved with, or would like providing UTM, patch management, those, would that be more of an like office administrator type of decision typically?
Probably an office administrator kind of decision, but remember, we're moving more and more towards the SaaS-based model. So I think your best clients are going to be consultants and resellers, because the physician offices, trust me, Steve, they don't know that they need a security assessment. It's appalling. I mean, I've walked into offices, where they don't know if they call out the patient's full name when they come to get them. That's a HIPAA violation. More often than not, I have to tell the doctor when I go in and I get access back behind the front desk that you need me to sign a business associate agreement right now, because chances are I'm going to see a chart while I'm in here, or I'm going to see a name on a chart. They don't know they need